Imagine waking up tomorrow to a news alert so explosive, so utterly life-altering, that the very fabric of your financial reality is torn in two. A prominent voice in the currency world, Frank 26, has just dropped a bombshell prediction, whispering numbers into the ears of eager investors that defy conventional economic wisdom. The Iraqi Dinar, currently valued at a fraction of a penny, could potentially surge to a staggering $4.80, while the Vietnamese Dong might catapult to $3.70. Let that sink in for a single, heart-pounding moment. We are not talking about a 10% or even a 100% gain. We are discussing a financial revaluation so astronomical it would represent one of the most profound wealth transfers in modern history, turning a few $100s into a fortune overnight. This is the powerful, intoxicating dream that fuels the entire revaluation, or RV, community, a sprawling digital ecosystem of YouTube channels, dedicated forums, and social media groups where hope is the primary currency and speculation is traded like hard fact. To understand why this idea has such a powerful grip on thousands of people, we must first journey back to the origin story of the Iraqi dinar itself. Following the First Gulf War and the subsequent invasion in 2003, Iraq's currency, once pegged to the mighty US dollar, went into a tailspin, collapsing from its previous strength to a point where it took over 1,450 dinars just to buy a single American dollar. This catastrophic devaluation was a direct reflection of a nation in turmoil, its infrastructure shattered, its political landscape fractured, and its vast oil wealth trapped by conflict and sanctions. But within this crisis, a narrative was born, the narrative of the phoenix rising from the ashes. Proponents of the RV theory argue that Iraq is not a poor country. It is, in fact, an incredibly wealthy one, sitting atop one of the world's largest proven oil reserves. The logic follows that once this wealth is properly unlocked, once the nation achieves true stability and rejoins the global economic stage, its currency must reflect this underlying, untapped value. This is the foundational bedrock of the entire belief system. It's a compelling story, one that taps into a deep-seated human desire for a simple, elegant solution to financial struggle. The online gurus and commentators amplify this narrative daily, pointing to every political meeting, every draft of a budget law, every statement from a central bank official as a secret, code, or a clue that the long-awaited event is just days or weeks away. They speak of a global gold standard reset, of secret meetings in Basel, Switzerland, where the world's financial masters are orchestrating this great monetary shift. They dissect the news with the fervor of biblical scholars decoding prophecy, finding significance in the most mundane of events. The community thrives on this constant drip feed of information, creating a self-sustaining cycle of anticipation and confirmation bias, where every piece of data is interpreted as proof that the dream is real and imminent. It's a powerful emotional cocktail, mixing the thrill of being part of an exclusive, insider group with the profound hope of liberation from debt, from the 9-to-5 grind, from financial worry forever. The promise isn't just about money. It's about freedom, security, and a rewritten future. And this is precisely what makes the message so potent and so shareable across platforms like YouTube, where dramatic thumbnails and shocking titles are the keys to capturing attention in a crowded digital landscape. But before we get swept away by the undeniable allure of this fantasy, before we allow our hearts to race at the mere mention of such impossible numbers, we have to pause and ask the most critical and often the most uncomfortable question: what does the cold, hard, unfeeling data actually say? Because the world of economic reality operates on a different set of rules entirely, and it is there we must turn our attention next, to separate the shimmering mirage from the solid ground of verified fact. So we stand at this critical juncture, with the siren song of immense wealth ringing in our ears, and now we must deliberately turn away from the enticing whispers and face the stark landscape of economic reality, a world governed not by hope but by data, precedent, and the immense, grinding machinery of global finance. Let's begin with the most fundamental question. What would it actually take for a currency to increase in value by tens of thousands of %, as the predictions of $4.80 for the dinar or $3.70 for the dong would require? The answer lies in the concept of a revaluation, a formal, deliberate adjustment of a country's exchange rate by its monetary authorities. This is not a mythical event. It happens, but for specific reasons and within a certain scale. A country with a pegged currency might revalue it by 5%, 10%, or even 20% to combat inflation or respond to trade imbalances. But a revaluation of the magnitude being promised is virtually unprecedented in modern economics because it would be an act of economic self-destruction. Think about it from Iraq's perspective. Their economy is almost entirely dependent on oil exports, which are priced in US dollars. A stronger dinar makes their oil more expensive for the rest of the world to buy, instantly crippling their only major industry and rendering their exports uncompetitive. Overnight, they would price themselves out of the global market. Furthermore, the International Monetary Fund, which has been deeply involved in Iraq's financial reconstruction for 2 decades, explicitly advises against such a move, advocating instead for stability and a managed, gradual approach to monetary policy. The actual data from the Central Bank of Iraq tells its own story. Their focus for years has been on controlling inflation, which remains a persistent threat, and building up their foreign currency reserves, which currently stand at over $100 billion. This is a healthy cushion, yes, but it is the financial bedrock for the current exchange rate, not a launch pad for a meteoric rise. In fact, the central bank's interventions are all aimed at maintaining stability, not orchestrating a seismic shock to the system. They are fighting to keep the dinar from weakening further, not preparing it for a historic ascent. Now, let's address the specific mechanisms often cited by the RB community. The idea of deleting zeros is frequently misunderstood as a revaluation. When a government announces it will remove 3 zeros from its currency, it is primarily a change of appearance, a monetary reform for practical convenience. It's like exchanging an old, tattered $1,000 bill for a crisp new $1 bill. The purchasing power remains identical. You haven't become richer. Your wallet is just thinner. Turkey and Zimbabwe executed such reforms, and while it simplified transactions, it did not create a single millionaire from a thousandaire. The underlying economic conditions, the debt, the GDP, the inflation, remain completely unchanged. Similarly, the narrative around the Vietnamese Dong often revolves around its perceived undervaluation and Vietnam's impressive economic growth. It is true that Vietnam is a manufacturing powerhouse and a rising star in Southeast Asia. However, its currency policy is meticulously managed by the State Bank of Vietnam to ensure its exports remain cheap and competitive. A dong suddenly worth $3.70 would vaporize its entire economic model, instantly shutting down factories and causing mass unemployment. The World Bank and financial analysts project a future for the dong of gradual, managed appreciation over decades, measured in single percentage points per year, not a sudden, earth-shattering leap. This chasm between the thrilling narrative and the sobering data forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth about the information ecosystem surrounding these currencies. The intel that circulates is often a closed loop, a game of telephone where unverified rumors from anonymous sources in Baghdad or mistranslated snippets of parliamentary debates are amplified and presented as definitive proof. There is an entire industry built on this hope, selling premium subscription newsletters, insider reports, and seminar tickets, all while being insulated from accountability because the promised event is always just on the horizon, forever tomorrow. This constant state of imminent arrival is a powerful psychological tool, preventing disillusionment and maintaining engagement. But once we arm ourselves with this understanding of the economic fundamentals, the picture becomes painfully clear. The dream of a magical, lottery ticket-style revaluation is a financial fantasy, a compelling story that collapses under the weight of its own economic impossibility. And this realization then leads us to the most important part of our journey. If this path is a mirage, what does a genuinely strategic, informed, and responsible approach to such speculative investments actually look like? So here we are, standing on the solid ground of economic reality, the seductive fantasies of overnight riches dispelled by the clear light of data and precedent. But this doesn't have to be a moment of disappointment. Rather, it can be a moment of profound empowerment, the beginning of a truly strategic financial journey where you are in control, not chasing rumors, but building understanding. The path forward isn't about abandoning curiosity in foreign currency or emerging markets. It's about transforming that curiosity from a gamble into an educated, calculated part of a broader strategy. Let's be very clear. The legitimate opportunity with currencies like the Iraqi Dinar or Vietnamese Dong does not lie in a mythical, one-time revaluation event, but in the very real, albeit slow and often volatile, process of long-term economic appreciation. This is the difference between hoping for a lightning strike and patiently planting a tree. For this to work, you must fundamentally change your research process. Instead of spending hours on forums deciphering cryptic intel, your time must be dedicated to analyzing primary sources. This means going directly to the websites of the International Monetary Fund and reading their full Article 4 consultation reports for Iraq and Vietnam. These documents provide a meticulous, unbiased assessment of each nation's economic health, detailing risks from public debt and corruption to the challenges of diversifying away from oil. It means reading the annual financial stability reports published by the Central Bank of Iraq and the State Bank of Vietnam, where they outline their explicit monetary policy goals, which are invariably centered on stability and controlling inflation, not engineering a speculative windfall for foreign investors. You need to follow the price of oil, as it is the direct lifeline of the Iraqi economy, and monitor global manufacturing indexes to understand the demand for Vietnamese exports. This is the unglamorous work of an investor, and it is the only work that yields reliable insight. And let's talk directly about risk. If you still choose to allocate a very small portion of your portfolio, what financial advisors would call risk capital, you are fully prepared to lose. To such speculative currencies, you must do so with your eyes wide open to the immense dangers. Beyond the fundamental economic unlikelihood of a massive RV, there are very immediate threats. The physical currency you hold is likely to be older, demonetized notes that may never be eligible for any future exchange, rendering them worthless collector's items. The market is rife with scams selling counterfeit or obsolete bills at massively inflated premiums, preying on hope. And even if a legitimate, gradual appreciation were to occur over 20 or 30 years, you face immense logistical and legal hurdles in actually exchanging the currency, navigating foreign banking laws, and potentially triggering complex tax liabilities. This is not the simple buy low, sell high story it's often portrayed as. It's a labyrinth of practical obstacles. Therefore, the most powerful call to action I can leave you with is this: become the analyst, not the follower. Let this be the last video you watch where you are a passive recipient of information. Your mission, starting today, is to take command of your own financial education. Use the tools we discussed. Go to the IMF website and download one report. Just one. Read the executive summary. It will be dense, it will be filled with jargon, but push through. This is how you build the muscle of discernment. Compare the official statements from the central banks with the headlines you see on YouTube channels. Notice the stark, undeniable gap between the two. This practice of going to the source is the ultimate vaccine against financial hype. It is what separates the successful investor from the perpetual hopeful. I want you to put a comment below right now and tell me one thing you will research from a primary source this week. Let's create a community of verified information, not recycled speculation. And if this video has shifted your perspective, if it has given you the tools to separate economic fact from financial fiction, then do me this favor. Smash that like button because it helps this educational content reach others who are stuck in the cycle of hope, and subscribe to the channel because we are just getting started. We have a lot more to unpack about navigating the complex world of finance with clarity, skepticism, and a steadfast commitment to the truth. The greatest investment you will ever make is not in a distant currency. It is in your own financial intelligence. Now go out there and verify.